Hello guys, this is Ben in Parts here, and today we're going to talk about an especially strange, unusual cryptid for the first episode of this Cryptid cast series. This is going to be a series I do every day where I will talk about different cryptids, their attributes, where they are, where they're located, and I thought I should start off today with the slide rock bolter because it dates from the 19th and early 20th century during the Lumberjack days. And it's honestly one of the most bizarre, fascinating cryptids I have ever come across in my quite extensive history since I was 12 and 13 of browsing through cryptids. So what is the slide rock bolter? Well, it's very much a cryptid that does what it sounds like. It slides or bolts down rocks and then gobbles up its prey. The slide rock bolter, or in Latin, Macrostoma saxiperumtus, is a very bizarre creature recounted by the Lumberjacks of North America, like I said before, during the 19th and early 20th centuries. It's said exclusively to live in the mountains of Colorado, but, get this, only on mountains where the slope is at an angle greater than 45 degrees. And why is that? Because it needs to slide down mountains in order to eat its prey. It is shaped rather like a land whale, and no, I don't mean someone who's eaten and gotten excessively fat. I mean, it's shaped like a gigantic whale with a tail a bit like a dolphin, only it uses the grab hooks on its huge tail to latch onto the crest of a mountain or ridge at a 45-degree angle. And it will often sit there for days at a time, watching the gorge below for any lumberjacks, tourists, or animals. And once it spots its prey, it lifts up its tail, and gravity sends it hurtling downhill, where it crushes trees, rocks and everything else in its path, and its drool acts like the grease to increase the speed of its body, and as it slides down it scoops up everything into its huge mouth, and its speed then carries it right up the side of the other ridge, and it again grasps it there with its tail and weight. It has a huge head and huge maw that it uses to eat. It has tiny eyes, and it has a mouth which has been described as similar to a sculpin's, and as I said before, its tail has a kind of fluke with two huge grab hooks, and those grab hooks are so strong that it can suspend it there for days and days at a time. I'm not sure exactly how the boulder is meant to have sat there undetected for so long, because if it's, say, 100 feet long, 200 feet long, or bigger, you would expect that someone would have noticed it, but I would imagine maybe it has some kind of camouflage on its skin. It blends into the rock, it looks like the rock, it sits there for ages and ages absolutely motionless with either its eyes closed or its eyes open but camouflaged amid the rocky texture of its skin, or maybe it uses its nose and its scent to detect prey while keeping its eyes closed to make it look extra camouflaged. And in the lore, this slide rock bolter is said to be incredibly deadly. It's said that whole parties of tourists have been gorged on at once. Whole parties of lumberjacks, whole parties of workers, whole parties of explorers, or just anyone going about their business has just been devoured. And it's said that it doesn't only menace tourists, but it also menaces the forest, because there have been lots of slopes, ridges, mountains that have been just rendered absolute wastelands because the boulder will slide down, knocking down trees, knocking down bushes, knocking down shrubbery, even uprooting things by the roots. And so you will end up with many canyons that have smooth, steep slides. However, this is also a double-edged sword, because it means that in some areas the bolter is said to get less prey because people will know it's in the area and will avoid the area. They'll see the slides and they'll know not to go there. And it's even said that this has at one point been the downfall of the slide rock bolter, because there was a forest ranger in the area between the Ophir Peaks and Lizard Head who decided to deceive the bolter, knowing it was there, probably from the slides. He built a dummy tourist, put a jacket on it, put knee breeches on it, even put a guidebook in its hand for added effect, and it was filled with gunpowder, and it was put in a very conspicuous place in the ridge. And the next day, a bolter that either had been up there already or had already slid down another canyon and had attached itself to the ridge of this canyon saw it, and it dashed down hundreds of miles an hour, mouth open. It bit onto the, quote, tourist, and the explosions were so catastrophic for the boulder that not only did they destroy the bolter, they flattened half the buildings in the town of Rico, which have never been rebuilt to this day. And it said that the remains of the bolter were so big that they made a huge, huge meal for the local buzzards that summer. So, could this slide rock bolter be real? All lore aside. Stranger things have happened. The coelacanth was thought to have been extinct for 65 million years, and then one guy just snared one off South Africa by mistake. People thought that the mountain gorilla was a complete fraud until Oscar van Beven killed one and displayed it in London. Many stranger things have happened. However, this creature would have to be huge to do this, in the tens or even hundreds of feet. Not only to be long enough to hook onto the ridge of the canyon, but to grab onto it, to hold itself there, and to be fat enough to have the mass enough that it could slide down. Even with the aid of saliva, it would need a huge amount of weight to just slide down and grasp things up. So could it be real in an area that these days is reasonably well explored? I'm not sure, but in the lore it's definitely real. And what could it actually be inspired by? There's been some debate about this. Some people have said that a huge landslide would come along and swallow up people and they'd never be seen again, and people would start to say it must be a giant creature, and that's where the rumours of the bolter came along. Some people say that maybe they would be walking in a canyon and they'd see a huge unexpected landslide and they'd dive away in the nick of time, and word would get around that what could have caused this huge landslide, maybe it was an animal, and that's where the story of the bolter came along. Some people even think that maybe some kind of predator like a wolf or a bear was known to pounce on people in certain areas, and word got around and people exaggerated the stories, and they never actually saw the predator themselves, and there were lots of people going missing, so they came to the conclusion that it was the bolter. Either way, regardless of the origin, the bolter has definitely fixed itself into popular lore. In the 2015 horror-inspired remake of Fearsome Creatures, it's depicted as an enormous fish weighing 25,000 pounds. It has fins, it has absolutely razor-sharp teeth, it has a hooked tail, it's been portrayed in other depictions as an apex predator, it scares away even other predators, and it even intimidates the hodag, wolves, spider wolves, and other things. So the bolter has definitely caught on in popular lore. It's not going to go away anytime soon. The internet's been full of depictions and artistic renditionings of it. It's definitely taken on a life of its own in popular folklore, and I imagine it'll be around for quite some time. As for the town of Rico, some have said that it was flattened by the bolter explosion. Some have also said that the mines dried up and the industry was abandoned, and many of the buildings were completely decayed over time, and that's the source of it. And some other people have also thought that maybe wide trails of rubble were seen by residents of the area in the mountains, and damage from the mining was seen by others, which could account for the bolter. On the one hand, though, William T. Cox was not a fantasist. He was a state forester of Minnesota, commissioner of conservation, and spent his whole life working with governments to manage forests throughout the US, Canada, and Brazil. So it could be said that he knew his stuff and that he wasn't one to make up a story, and he wasn't just some hillbilly who lived in his mountain all his life. He had extensive experience, he travelled the world, so yeah, it could be plausible. Please let me know what your thoughts are in the comments. Please let me know any suggestions you have for the next episode, and I will see you tomorrow.